Today I want to talk about a Bible verse that is like my favorite one. How many of you guys have a favorite Bible verse that you'd share? That you're like, yeah, I can share that. Anyone? Go ahead.
It's actually in Isaiah. It's Isaiah 43:19.
Yeah, that's good. Usually they're touching like that. Mine is just nerdy. Anyone else got a good favorite Bible verse that you're like, man, that's really helped me? Anyone? You don't have to share it, but if you want to, you can.
Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding.
Amen.
In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Do not be wise in your own eyes, but fear the Lord and walk with him.
Amen. That's good. Be still and know that I am God. That is good. How many of you guys needed that one this morning? Just be still. Acknowledge him. Don't lean on your own understanding. He's God. These are encouraging. Mine is more nerdy than that, but it's encouraging in a different way. And I just want to help those of you who are weird like me, probably. To me, the things that are most impactful in the Bible are the things that prove its validity. Because when I have doubts, when I have struggles, I need that bad. I need to be able to say, you know what? God is who he says he is. And I know this because prophecy has proved it to be so. It is an underappreciated part of the Bible, Old Testament prophecy, that proves that Jesus is who he said he is. Paul went around to different synagogues and into the marketplaces and to just speak with whoever would happen to be there. And his whole thing was to prove that Jesus was the Messiah from Old Testament prophecies and then to preach the gospel to them. That doesn't mean every time he preached the gospel it included that, but oftentimes it does. Oftentimes it does. If I asked you to prove that Jesus is who he says he is from the Old Testament, could you do it?
Isaiah 53.
Amen.
It basically just tells you everything about Jesus' life, and it's spot on.
And it was written 800 years beforehand, right? When people read it today, they're like, oh yeah, obviously this is about Jesus. And you're like, yeah. But it was written 800 years beforehand. You know, he was pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him. 800 years beforehand. Sometimes people will want to say various things to come against your Christian faith, like, oh, Christians just made up a new thing and they hijacked Judaism. It's like, no. The prophets of Judaism were saying the same thing the whole time. In the earlier parts, I can't remember if it's Isaiah 7 or 9, but it's, to us a child is born, to us a son is given. The government will be upon his shoulders, right? He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Prince of Peace, Mighty God, Everlasting Father. How is it that this baby being born is the mighty God, the everlasting Father, which is a little sloppy from Trinitarian terms, but you know, how is it that you could look at this baby in a manger and say, that's God right there? But that's what the Old Testament was saying. So it's not like Christianity hijacked the Old Testament and tried to say, hey guys, it's this new thing now, right? Well, various religions do that today. Islam tried to do that. They tried to hijack the Bible and say, well, it's that, but they got it corrupted, and we're the ones that are correct, and you need to follow this new religion. The LDS faith has done that. The same kind of thing, like, yeah, it's the Bible. Yes, of course. But actually there's more, and we're the only ones that are correct, and you need to listen to us. But that's not what's going on with Christianity. See, these guys are trying to take the Bible and use its validity to get your trust to make you convert to their new religions. Christianity is just a continuation of what God was always doing and always saying to the people of Israel. And Old Testament prophecy shows us that this is correct, that this is true. And so to me, Daniel 9 and the prophecy about the 70 weeks is one of my favorite Bible verses. And no matter where you land on end times prophecy or whatever, you should be able to appreciate the way that this goes. And the reason I have to say that is because it is a battleground verse or a battleground chapter for multiple different competing views of theology about end times stuff, right? But, so it talks about 70 weeks that God has declared and decreed for Daniel's people, the Jews, and their holy city, Jerusalem. And so it talks about what's going to happen. And up to the 69th week, pretty much everyone agrees. It leads up to the time of Jesus, which is insane that a Bible verse gave you a time clock for when the Messiah would come. Everyone can agree on that and be excited about that. And then there's the last 7 years, which is what everyone disagrees on and what almost everyone talks about when we get to the chapter. And it's like, no. You've missed the best part. Let's talk about this whole other thing where Jesus proved that he is God and like proved that Christianity is true by coming at the right moment in history. So when people tell me that there are no proven prophecies in the Bible, because sometimes people will say that, and I know that those people haven't looked into it, when they say stuff like that. And then I bring this one up, and they're like, well, I mean, I don't know. Couldn't it be anything? It's like, yeah, sure, it could be anything. But look at what actually happened and when it actually happened. Like, it's true. Like, it happened when it said. And so I'm going to read the passage, and we're going to get into it. What's my next slide? Yeah, okay. I'm going to go back, if I can. Okay. So you can open up to Daniel 9 if you've got your Bible. And we're actually going to start in verse 24. Daniel 9:24. Daniel 9:24. So once you get there, you can keep your finger there. Daniel 9:24, and I'm going to give a little bit more info before we jump in. What's going on is Daniel has been kidnapped into Babylon, okay? Him and a bunch of other people. It's the Babylonian exile. So they've been there a long time. It's nearing the end of their time there. The reason he knows this is because the prophet Jeremiah told them that it was going to be 70 years, right? God told Jeremiah that this exile was going to last 70 years. Interestingly enough, the reason it's supposed to last 70 years is because for 490 years, the Israelites refused to give the land its Sabbath rest, which is to say every 7th year they were supposed to not do farming, which is insane. It's kind of like when God's like, hey, I want you to be generous and give. And you're like, I can't. That's insane. When God tells you, I want you to tell your friend about me. I want you to share the gospel. And you're like, I cannot do that. I'm too afraid. Imagine telling a whole country, don't farm one whole year every 7 years. But we need the food, right? Like, how is that going to work? Trust me. They didn't do it, apparently. Well, maybe they did it a few times. I don't know how many times they did it, but apparently they didn't do it most of the time. Sufficient for them to be punished by God sending them out of the land for 70 years to give it all of the rest that had been built up in 490 years. If you divide it by 7, that's the amount of time that they skipped their Sabbath rest for the land, right? So this is the reason they've been exiled, and now God's saying, I'm going to give you another period of 490 years until something else happens, which is cool. I love it when the Bible is like super deep, and this is why I'm saying this is like a nerdy passage. But for me, I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. Like, I love that. Anyone else that gets super into that kind of stuff? Oh, isn't it good? Everyone else is just like, be still and know that I'm God. And I'm like, yeah, but this math problem though. And I hate math, but this is so cool, So let me go ahead and read from verse 24. 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin, and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. And some translations will put it a most holy one, because the Greek or the Hebrew it just says the most holy. And so the translators have to be like, well, most holy what? What is getting anointed? And so the ESV puts it a most holy place. Verse 25, know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and build Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks then. For 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and moat, but in a troubled time. And after 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off. Any guesses? Yes. Well, yeah. Yes. An anointed one. So the Messiah and in Hebrew and Christ in Greek, it means an anointed one, right? And so it's clearly talking about Jesus, right? It says, an anointed one will be cut off. Where did I leave off there? It's in here somewhere. Oh, and shall have nothing. Again, some translations will say, but not for himself, right? Just a difference in how the Hebrew scholars are trying to piece together the passage, because, translation is hard, right? So that's interesting. I lost my place again. Thank you. Luna is always on it with this is where you're at. Who is it? Oh, thank you, Karen. You guys are similar. She does it in youth group all the time. It's very helpful. And after 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and shall have nothing, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end shall come with a flood, and to the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed, and he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week, and for half of the week, some translations will say in the middle of the week, and some will say in the midst of the week, right? But for half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice and offering. And on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate, until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. Okay, this doesn't really sound like a favorite Bible verse kind of Bible verse, but let's get into it. It just said that from a particular date in history, there will be this many years until the Messiah comes. And when he comes, he will do these specific things. Let me reread that list of things. Finish transgression. Put an end to sin. Atone for iniquity. Bring in everlasting righteousness. Seal both vision and prophet or prophecy. And to anoint a most holy place or one. Each one of those things have corresponding New Testament Bible verses that say Jesus did that already. Wild. So the New Testament agrees this is what Jesus did when he came, and the timing is correct, which is this is the nerdy part that I just love, and I hope that could bring you into this nerdiness with me and to love it also, okay? First, I want to talk about a way that skeptics will go with this. They want to go a certain way. They want to say, obviously, the disciples just looked at the Old Testament and they found out what the Messiah was supposed to do, and they just made stuff up about what he would do, okay? And then they wrote it down. That's what they did, right? And sure, that's a fairly reasonable claim until you consider the fact that the disciples were killed for their testimony. And not just because they believed a thing, but because they said they saw a thing. They said that they saw Jesus rise from the dead. And multiple times, we have this historically noted for us in the book of Acts, multiple times they're given chances to recant. And they're being beaten and dragged into synagogues, and some of them are being killed. And they're like, nope, you can kill us if you want. This is what we saw. Jesus rose from the dead. And it's not just like they had a weird vision. He hung out with them for 40 days and told them more things during that 40 days and then told them to go and make disciples of all nations. So it's like, what do you want us to do? This is what we saw. We can't do anything but tell you what we saw. And so you've got the people that are making the claims that Jesus fulfilled all these prophecies are paying for those claims with their blood, refusing to recant. And then you've got the fact that Jesus it's not just like things that you could claim without evidence. Jesus even repeats this promise that is in the book of Daniel that the sanctuary will be destroyed. He will, where is it? He will, the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end will come with a flood. To the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed. Okay, Jesus said, when you see the desolation or the abomination that causes desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel, flee to the mountains. Right? He said that this generation will not pass until these things are done. Like, this is going to happen in this generation. And then not 40 years from when Jesus said that, the Romans came in and they did destroy the temple. And the Christians did see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, and they did flee to the mountains. This happened. And you know what you can do if you're making up a religion? You could say that, Jesus fulfilled all the prophecies or whatever, but you can't make Rome come and destroy Jerusalem. You know what I mean? That's another level of hoax, okay? Hey, Rome, could you come in and, they're cooperating with the hoax now, you know what I'm saying? Like,
But they're the ones that killed Jesus for saying that he was
right. So they're in on it? I'm so confused. How does this work? Rome thought they were solving a problem. The Jews thought they were solving a problem by putting Jesus to death. This is not a hoax that people put together. The disciples were like, we thought Jesus was going to keep being alive and keep being our Messiah. They just didn't understand how it was going to work. So Jesus comes back from the dead, and he shows that his plan was different than they thought. But then he tells them to go and make disciples of all nations, and they go and they share this testimony. They write down what they saw. And here's another thing. If they're making it up and the New Testament community is just, being fooled, how are you going to explain the miracles? Because it's not just that Jesus had miracles or they said he had miracles. It's like Paul was healing people by the power of God. This is actually the thing that got the disciples in trouble after Jesus ascended into heaven and told them to go make disciples, is they healed some guy by the power of Jesus. The Jews bring him in. They're like, oh, great, we thought we put this whole Jesus thing to rest. More people are getting healed. We've got a problem on our hands. Imagine thinking that's a problem, right? And so they're like, by what authority are you doing these things? They're like, it was Jesus. And so they beat them, And they're like, all right. And so how do you explain this fact that everywhere they go, they have the authority and power to cast out demons and do all the same stuff? And it would be one thing if it was just like, hey, the time prophecy worked out and they made up a time and they made up a whole thing. But Jesus doesn't get to pick how they're going to kill him. You know what I'm saying? He will be pierced for your transgressions, crushed for your iniquities. His hands and feet are going to be pierced according to the Psalms. I mean, the Bible is just full of over and over evidence that Christianity is true. And it always drives me nuts when I hear people say, well, it's just about faith. And what they mean, and yes, it's about faith, but what they mean by that sometimes is, there's no way to prove it, just believe. And I'm like, stop that! You can know. Paul was going around proving that Jesus was the Messiah. It's actually not hard to do. Just read some Old Testament stuff and nerd out with me, You can do it too, right? So the 70 weeks that are decreed about their people, the Jews, and their holy city, Jerusalem, is 70 groups of 7 years. I already talked about how it adds up to 490 years, which is cool how God is just stringing that same thing together. It's almost as if it's like a complete number of times. 7 is supposed to be the number of completion in the Bible. And it's like this complete amount of time God let them disobey before he's like, all right, I'm taking you out. You guys are going to Jerusalem. You guys are going to Babylon for 70 years. He's like, cool, you get another chance. The Messiah's coming. The Messiah coming is like, for Jerusalem, a death knell. It will bring them life or it will bring them death. Choose this day who you will serve. The disciples, the Jews who turned on the day of Pentecost, the rest of them that turned later, they escaped Jerusalem in that judgment, but it was death for everyone who did not, right? And this isn't an interpretation thing. This is just a historical fact. And Jesus, he pronounced woe on them. Like, it's going to be bad for you if you reject. It'll be better for the people in Sodom and Gomorrah on the day because someone greater is here. It'll be like the day of judgment will have been worse for Jerusalem for rejecting God himself standing in front of them, showing them proof of who he is. It'll be worse for them, right? This is how it's sketched out. The first 7 is 49 years. And it breaks it down to 7 years and 434 years. I'm getting this wrong already. It breaks it down between 49 years, 434 years, and 7 years. There's 7 sevens, 62 sevens, and 1 7. Okay, that's the confusing part. Forget it, okay? It's fine. You don't need to remember that. It's just to say, for the first 49 years, it's when the temple is it's when Jerusalem is being built. And that's true. We don't have a definitive date on that, but we know that it took a while. You can go to Ezra and you can look and see. You can go to Nehemiah and you can look and see that they have been building. And it wasn't just building the temple. It wasn't just building the walls. It was building Jerusalem and giving it its governance back. And Artaxerxes, when he sent Ezra, he gave him the ability to put the laws back into effect, which is to say, you guys are a sovereign nation-ish. Obviously, Persia still wanted its, taxes, I bet. But, I think there's even a provision in there that they're not to be taxed, the priests and Levites specifically. So it's as if the king of Persia was like, you guys can go be as sovereign as I can let you be. I won't even tax your Levites and your religious dudes. I'll just let that be a thing. But obviously, you're still under Persian control. But it's essentially giving them their sovereignty to be Jerusalem again back. They can be this country that follows God's commands, even to the point where they can put the death penalty in effect when they need to. They are pretty darn sovereign. This is this is for sure the beginning of this decree. And the math works when you start from there. 457 is the decree of Artaxerxes, and we can see this in Ezra 7. Ezra is one of the two men that God used a king or an emperor to send back to Jerusalem with full authority to go and do God's bidding in Jerusalem. So Nehemiah was one of these guys, Ezra was one of these guys, and before them, Cyrus made a decree that the Jews in general could go back and rebuild their temple. So they'd already been doing that. And then God moves these kingdoms to send more people back to give Jerusalem more of its authority back and everything. So in Ezra 7 verse 8 is where I'll go. Of course, you could read more, but this I'm getting here for the year. Ezra and Ezra came, this is verse 8, Ezra 7 verse 8. Ezra came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. The 7th year of the king. God didn't have to do this. He didn't have to give us the date. But I think he wants us to know that we can prove that Jesus is the Messiah. So it's cool that he did, right? So he gives us the date. This is 457 BC, the 7th year of the king. And this is how they did dates back in the day. They did it based on reigns. Of course, they didn't have like 1957 and 1958. It didn't work that way. It was like in the 3rd year of the king of this, country, because that's when people kept their records. This new king is reigning. That was this year according to this. And they just had to piece it all together like a puzzle. And today, chronologists are piecing these things together. And we can know that this is 457 BC, the decree. And I should stop at this point to tell you there are 3 different opinions on what decree to start from, because there are 3 decrees. The first one was from King Cyrus. I know this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but that's okay. The King Cyrus decree, which was to go back and rebuild the temple, which isn't actually what the prophecy says to start from. It says to rebuild Jerusalem. Okay. And then there's another decree, 457, which is, I really ought to read it. In verse 25, there's other things that is said to him, but in verse 25 of Ezra 7:25, and you, Ezra, according to the wisdom of your God, that is, I'll start that over. And you, Ezra, according to the wisdom of your God, that is in your hand, appoint the magistrates and judges who may judge all the people in the province of Babylon, in the province beyond the river, all such as know the laws of your God, and those who do not know them you shall teach. Whoever will not obey the law of your God and the law of the king, let judgment be strictly executed on him, whether for death or for banishment or for confiscation of his goods or for imprisonment. It's funny because the king doesn't know the law. He doesn't know the Old Testament law. He's like, I don't know, whatever it is that you guys do, go do that, Ezra. You can do that. You have full authority to go and put your laws back into place. 27, blessed be the Lord, the God of our fathers, who put such a thing as this into the heart of the king, to beautify the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem, and to extend to me his steadfast love before the king and his counselors. Okay, and it just goes on. But the point is it's not just to restore the temple. That was already told by Cyrus and Darius, and now this is, hey, go and restore, like Jerusalem. You can be the thing you were before, right? Then the next one is 444 BC, and some people think that the time clock should start from there. It doesn't work when you do that, because it doesn't go to the right time, unless you use years that are from a lunar calendar instead of a not lunar calendar. I don't know. What is it called? A solar calendar, I guess? So instead of 365 days a year, it would be, this is the nerdy part. Are you guys with me still? Okay. All right. So instead of 365 days, it would be, 360? 360 days? It'd be a 30-day calendar per month. So it's so weird that if you use that, it still works if you assume a lunar calendar, which is almost like God was in the mix of that as well. I don't know. He created the planet and the moon and the sun and all this, so he's in on it. But the point is it's weird that it kind of works, but it's close, but it's not quite close, because the problem is from that year, even with using that, and I didn't know this. The last time I preached a sermon about this, I picked the other date. I have changed my mind, and I'm now going with the 457 BC decree. And the reason I changed my mind is I didn't realize that the year it ends on, 32 AD, did not have a Friday Passover. Jesus died on a Friday Passover. The Bible is so clear. And I'm like, I can't use that date anymore. I'm like, well, 457 better work. And so I had to go and relook at the math. And it's weird. It works to 30 AD. The two choices for Jesus' death, because we don't know for sure, are 30 AD or 33 AD. And the reason we pick those two is because of a Friday Passover. That's why it has to be those dates. But this other calculation that goes from 444 BC is close. It's cool that it's close. It's close enough to still be evidence if you didn't know any better. But 457 BC goes literally to 30 AD. That's cool. That's when Jesus had died on a cross. And if we're wrong about that and it's 33 AD, that's okay, because it says in the midst of the last week, Jesus will die on the cross. So it's like you still get it if it's 30 AD, right? It's pretty cool. Okay. All right, are you guys all still with me? All right. The first 49 years, Jerusalem is rebuilt. 27 AD, the baptism of Jesus. The reason we know this is because we know that in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, John the Baptist started his ministry. And sure, we don't know the day. We don't know if Jesus let this go on for days, weeks, months, or years before he went to John to get baptized also. But we know when John started baptizing. And it's the right year, okay? So the Messiah is supposed to come in 27 AD, according to this prophecy, and start his ministry, which is what happened. There's a little bit of debate, I got to tell you, with the 27 AD baptism of Jesus, because the 15th year of Tiberius is actually supposed to be, oh goodness, it depends on how you understand the beginning of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. Sorry, I was wrong. This is still the nerdy part. Okay. So Tiberius Caesar was after Augustus Caesar, and there's something called co-regency with emperors. It's when an emperor is starting to get old and sick, or maybe they know that for whatever reason someone else is coming in. It's usually their son, okay? They will start reigning with them together. This has happened multiple times in the Bible where scholars are like, that date isn't right. And archaeology proves later, the reason that you thought the Bible was wrong is because of co-regency, actually. This happened in the book of Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar, his grandson, whose name is, Belteshazzar? No, that's the wrong one. What's it? Is that right? Okay, it's a jumbled mess in my brain, y'all. And his dad's name was Nabonidus, but in the book of Daniel, it just says, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, Belteshazzar. So they're like, we know from history that Nabonidus was Nebuchadnezzar's son, and actually Belteshazzar was his grandson, or whatever. And so they have to admit that the Bible is right. It's just using different than conventional language, right? But the thing, before they knew that Belteshazzar was his grandson, they were saying, he doesn't exist. That's a made-up name. The son is Nabonidus. It's not Belteshazzar. Whoever wrote Daniel was a fake. He didn't know. He wasn't there. He just made it up. That's the skeptical claim. But then archaeology discover, well, actually, he was. And they're like, well, he wasn't reigning. It's like, well, actually, you find another thing in archaeology, and you find out he was reigning, but as a co-regent. And what is Belteshazzar? Okay, you remember the story in Daniel with the writing on the wall? And they bring in Daniel because he's got a good reputation for knowing things like this. They're like, what the heck's going on with this weird, creepy spiritual thing that happened? Daniel, help us, And so Daniel tells them it's a judgment against them. That very night, they're going to be judged, and their city's going to be taken over by the Medes and the Persians. Okay, so the king says, thank you for telling us this stuff. I'm going to offer you the third place in the kingdom. Why is he offering him the third place in the kingdom? Well, it's because he already had the second place. His dad was the actual king, and he was co-regent king, and he could offer Daniel, the best thing is the third place in the kingdom. And we know this from archaeology and from history, but the scholars and the skeptics always want to be like, that's not true. So 27 AD has a similar thing going on, where Augustus, is it right? Augustus and Tiberius, yeah. They ruled together as co-regents, and 27 AD is when he started to rule as a co-regent. So it's the math works to that. And we know, and Luke's not just wrong, Luke's doing a conventional thing that even Josephus, who was a historian of the day, did, where some people do it, some people don't, but apparently in Jerusalem, the guys that have this in the area of Syria, when they do history, they're using co-regencies to start reigns. Josephus did this multiple times in his works, so we know that we're not making something up for a loophole. This is like a normal thing. And 27 AD is the right year for the baptism of Jesus. It's crazy. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say earlier? I said, and I'm wrong. I said that 27 AD is when Tiberius reigned. What I mean to say is that was the 15th year of his reign, if you count from his co-regency. Okay. I think that's all the hard parts of today. Okay. It says then, so after this 62 sevens, right? After the 62 sevens, the Messiah will come. And he's going to do some particular things. But in the middle of the last seven, he will take away sacrifice and offering. This is where the debate starts. This last 7 years is the big debate. If you take my view, that the correct view, obviously. No, other people can debate me on this. They can be correct. Either way, it's really awesome. But if you do take the view that I hold, that the 7 years is not an end time 7-year tribulation, that inexplicably, without telling you it's doing that, is supposed to be plucked up out of its context, carried 2,000 years into the future, plopped down into our day, which is it's a way that a lot of people understand the passage. But it doesn't say there will be a gap. It doesn't say there's going to be an end time 7-year tribulation. In fact, that's the only passage in the Bible you could use to try and say so, and it's not saying that. It could be secretly meaning that, but it works the other way with the math just fine. I don't think we need to do that, because otherwise there's no way to know it would be a 7-year tribulation unless some guy from a Bible college told me so. Okay? So let's take it back into its context, set it where it goes, and say, okay, in the middle of that last 7 years, did the sacrifice and offering stop? Well, was Jesus the final sacrifice or not? Yeah, yes, he was. The final sacrifice. This is cool. A lot of people will not go with me here, and that's fine if you don't. Man, the math is right. This is it's really cool evidence for Christianity. Just because some guy told you there's going to be a 7-year end times tribulation and this didn't happen yet, I'm not gonna throw away what works with the math. Jesus did end sacrifice and offering. 34 AD, this is one we don't know. We actually don't know when Cornelius heard the gospel, but if you understand the prophecy to be a decree about the Jews specifically and their temple, their holy city Jerusalem, then it would make sense to see the end of that prophecy as being the end of something to do with the Jews and Jerusalem. Well, very shortly after Jesus died and rose from the grave, but not right away, the gospel went to the Gentiles. And they were weirded out by this and surprised because they were supposed to go to Jerusalem and Judea and all the ends of the earth, but they hadn't gotten there yet, right? And they were told to go throughout all the tribes of Israel because you won't be able to make it through all of the cities before I come back, Jesus said. Obviously not his final judgment and second coming, but this other judgment. I mean, they've had plenty of time now to make it through all the cities, but it's the Bible verse, or the chapter we just read said, he will make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. What did Jesus say when the Syrophoenician woman came to him? I've been sent only to the lost people, or the lost tribes of Israel. Is it right to give the food of the children to the dogs? Meaning, I'm offering the food to the children right now. But did Jesus say that, did he mean all Gentiles were banned from the kingdom? No. But that's not here yet. I've made a strong covenant with many. This passage says he makes a strong covenant with many. I know that a futurist take on this passage is that there's supposed to be, and this is so weird to me, it's either Jesus or the Antichrist, depending on who you ask. Wild. There's some gravity there, okay? And it says, it's this many years before a Messiah, a prince, will come. It doesn't say a Messiah and then a prince. A Messiah, a prince. Jesus is the prince. Meaning, let's reread part of that passage. Because some will say, well, there's the Messiah, yes, but then there's a prince, and that has to be the Antichrist, because he's going to put an end to sacrifice and offering. That sounds like a bad thing. Jesus did that. It was good when he did it. The reason they think that there needs to be a rebuilt temple in the end times, a third temple, is because they think there needs to be sacrifice and offerings again, and it to be destroyed again, and for them to be able to, for Antichrist to make a strong covenant with the Jews for 3.5 years, and then put an end to sacrifice and offering. That's the end time scheme. It's ripped from this passage. But it's not, the math works for it to be Jesus, actually, when you just let the years go through. When the people were exiled to Babylon, it wasn't Sorry, it wasn't just 70 years, but the 69th year, there's actually a 2,000-year gap, and they're actually stuck there for a lot longer, but I kept that part from you. It was, it's going to be 70 years. And it's based on this 490 years, and just like that, there's going to be another 490 years. Why take the last 7 years of that, rip it out of its context, and think it's something else when it already works? It just works, guys. Right? I lost my point, where I'm at. That's right. We're going to reread this. The part that people will say is probably about the Antichrist, I will say it's just still about Jesus. Because in verse... thank you. All right. Know therefore, in verse 25, Daniel 9:25, know therefore and understand that from the going out of the word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem to the coming of an anointed one, a prince, there shall be 7 weeks. Then for 62 weeks it shall be built again with squares and a moat, but in a troubled time. And after the 62 weeks, an anointed one shall be cut off and have nothing. Okay, do you see our map here? There's going to be 7 years, 7 weeks, and then 62 weeks, right? And then an anointed one will be cut off after that. Okay, we're pretty darn good from here, right? So after that 62 sevens, the anointed one will be cut off. Okay, and it's after, okay? And she'll have nothing. Some translations will say, and not for himself. And the people of the prince, wait, who's the prince? All right, back up. An anointed one, a prince. There's no other prince mentioned in the passage. There is no secret Antichrist prince somewhere in the passage. It's just the anointed one, a prince. It's Jesus. Isn't that cool? And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. You could go multiple ways with this. It was the Jews' fault who rejected Jesus that it got destroyed. So, sure, you could say the people of the prince who is to come, Jesus is the Messiah, yeah, they'll destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, it's on you. Right? We have no king but Caesar, they said. Let his blood be on our heads and our children's heads. So it's on them, right? You could take it another way. There's a parable Jesus tells. It was a destruction parable against the Jews, and I didn't write it down, but I could give you the gist of it. It was, and I'm getting it mixed up in my brain. So it's either the parable of the wedding banquet. I don't think it's that one. I think it's the parable of the vineyard. Jesus tells a parable about a king who goes away on a journey, and he leases out his vineyard to people to bear the fruits of it. Okay, obviously, he's expecting an income from it. He's expecting some wine or something from it. Every time he sends a servant, though, think of it with Old Testament history. This is about the Jews. God sends them a prophet. Every time he sends a servant to receive the fruits of that king or of that vineyard, they kill him. All right, so the king sends another one, and he kills them. He sends another one, and he kills them. He's like, finally, look, okay, they'll respect my son, right? Ooh. And so then he sends Jesus. And what do? Jesus tells a parable. He's like, so the king sends his son, and they think to themselves, this is the heir. Let's kill him. Let's kill him. And then we can have what's his. And so they kill him. And then Jesus looks at the crowd of a lot of them unbelieving Jews who will not turn to him. And he says, well, what should the king do? What's the king going to do? And the Pharisee's like, he's going to destroy that city, burn it to the ground, and destroy it, and put those wretches to a miserable end. And Jesus is like, yep. And the people, and he says, and he will send his armies to destroy that city. What? His armies. That's another way you could take it. The people of the prince who is to come. In the parable, Jesus is comfortable saying that the Roman armies are his armies. Because that's the destruction he's talking about that's about to happen. He's comfortable enough to say, yeah. Well, and this happened in the Old Testament a lot of times. God would send Babylon to do a destruction for him. He would send Assyria. He would send Egypt to do something. And it's as if there's one passage where he puts a hook in the nose of that emperor and he drags him along to do his will. You know, it's like God, when he sends an army, in Isaiah 19:1, God is like riding on the clouds, coming to Egypt for destruction. What? It's like it's his army. It's like he's the king in charge of it. But that's not his people, sure. But he's free to call that his army. So the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the sanctuary in the I already lost the wording, but that's fine. Will destroy the city and the sanctuary, which did happen, and the end shall come with a flood. To the end there shall be war. Desolations are decreed, and he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. Who is that? That's the Jews. The gospel goes straight to them. So this is backing up. It's saying, and for a week he'll make this strong covenant with them, for the gospel to just go to them. For half of the week he shall put an end to sacrifice. Another way to look at that, and a lot of translations will say in the middle of the week. Isn't it wild that 27 AD to 30 AD, this is 3.5 years to the crucifixion? That's the middle of the week, man. That's cool. I like that. And on the wing of abomination shall come one who makes desolate until the decreed end is poured out on the desolator. This happens in the Old Testament a lot too, where God will say, hey, you, Babylon, I'm going to use you to do my will, and you're going to judge Jerusalem. But I'm going to destroy you too after that. And that's what happened, and it's explicitly the case for Babylon. And Rome, apparently, it's also the case. In the book of Revelation, it says the same stuff about it, where it's like, yeah, the beast is going to destroy the harlot riding on it, and then I'm going to put the beast to death too. I'm going to throw it in the lake of fire. So until the decreed end is poured out on the one who's doing the desolating, right? Regardless of if you go with me on the Revelation stuff or putting the 7-year tribulation, back where it goes here, and if you still think it's still future, that's fine. At the very least, you know what you can do with this passage? You can prove that Christianity is true with this passage. And a calculator, and a history book. It's actually pretty wild. When people say, well, it's just about faith, just believe. No, God is cooler than that. He's like, there's evidence. Will you submit? I am king, and I love you, and I'm good. What's your problem? I'm skipping through because I already talked about all this. Okay. I didn't have time to read all the passages, but the New Testament is very clear that this stuff already happened. And it says 70 weeks are decreed for this stuff to happen. Not 69. Jesus isn't waiting for 2,000 years for a 7-year end-time tribulation to put an end to sacrifice and offering. He did that. He isn't waiting to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for iniquity. He obviously did all that, right? This happened. 40 years later, just as this prophecy says would happen, the temple was destroyed. Jerusalem was destroyed. He said it would happen in this generation. I often hear people say there's no evidence for Christianity. Obviously, there is. They couldn't be more wrong. If this doesn't make you surrender to Jesus, you do not have an evidence problem. You have a heart problem. I think we should do what Paul did. Prove that Jesus was the Messiah using prophecy. This is just one of them. I like it. It's my favorite one, okay? Isaiah 52 and 53 is insane. For the same reasons, it tells you exactly how Jesus would die. And it gives you New Testament theology about how he's the sacrifice for your sin. That's crazy. 800 years in advance. Psalm 22, 1,000 years in advance, tells you that it details exactly how Jesus would die. It talks about what the people around would say about it. It tells you they'll gamble for his clothing. It tells you his hands and feet will be pierced, which crucifixion did not exist yet. 400 years before crucifixion existed, David is writing this thing down about how his hands and feet are going to be pierced. You can show that Jesus is who he says he is. And I'll tell you, a lot of times people don't actually care. They just have a heart problem. I like to show them this so that they still reject it, so that I can still say, I think you have a heart problem, man. Why won't you turn to Jesus? Like, you can verify this through history and archaeology and all this. Like, this happened. Imagine the weight of that. God said, in exactly this many years, this is what's going to happen. And then I'm going to destroy the temple, just so you know that it's for sure the thing I'm talking about. And then you go back and you see that Christians are dying for these claims that Jesus atoned for sin. You know, that he was the last final sacrifice and all this stuff. You're like, well, maybe so. And then it gets better, because then it's not just like you have one prophecy that's really cool. You have like hundreds of prophecies that you can cross-examine those prophecies with and say, well, is it really the case from all of these? Yes, it is. That's wild. We know that Jesus would be betrayed by a friend for 30 pieces of silver. We didn't need that, but God was like, here's more evidence. And we're sitting here with all this evidence, and we're like, it's just faith, guys. There's no way to know. Stop that. Please. Okay, let's pray. God, I pray that you would embolden us to become scholars about the Bible.